What is up, everyone? Roy here, and you are listening to the Clemens with a Z podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that resonates deeply with us all, but is often left unspoken: stress and anxiety. Specifically, stress and anxiety with men. So, we're joined today once again by Miles. You might remember from episode 23, a Dad Talk episode, where we discussed all things fatherhood. Now, this specific topic has been tossed around between Miles and I for the last few months, and we wanted to come on and share what we've experienced with regards to stress and anxiety, what we found that helps us process and work through this, and just kind of how it's been in the hopes to break down the walls of silence surrounding anxiety and stress in men. And in this talk, we explore how societal expectations have taught men to see emotional expression as weakness and how this impacts their mental health. We'll talk about the cultural pressures that we feel that push us to sometimes suppress our anxiety, not talk about it, and how when we do that, it affects not just our well being, but our relationships with those we care about most. We'll talk about our reluctance that we felt speaking about this, seeking help, and why we both feel it's crucial to break this cycle. And finally, we'll talk about and explore what healing looks like for us, how redefining masculinity to include vulnerability in our lives can pave the way for healthier lives and stronger connections. And this conversation is more about just coping, it's about understanding, embracing the full spectrums of what it means to be human, a father, and living with stress and anxiety. So let's get into it. We're live. What's up, Miles?
What's going on, Roy?
Glad to have you back on the podcast. I think it's been what, 2 years?
It's been 2 years. Yeah, that was a fun one. I
Hmm.
think the end of that podcast got a little blurry.
They always do. Um, especially the dad talks. They do definitely get blurry. Yeah, but glad to have you back.
Yeah,
This is sort of a cool conversation we're about to have that it's been like a few months in the making, I think,
yeah.
with regards to stress and anxiety. I don't know how we started talking about this together. Do you remember?
I feel like it kind of got brought up in a conversation probably a while ago, knowing us two.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I know back in March, my anxiety levels just skyrocketed. So I know
Mhm.
you were one of the people that I felt like I leaned on a lot as far as just like kind of like, hey, Roy, this is how I'm feeling. I
Mhm.
feeling like crap. Like, do you normally feel like this? And you're like, yeah, this dealt with this as well.
Mhm.
You're kind of giving me things that you use, like tools that you use that I definitely put to work as well. So yeah, I feel like I said, I feel like it's something we've always talked about, but yeah, definitely leaned on you in March when things got bad.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't know. I've always been, I mean, this platform has been me trying to provide a space to talk about things that don't normally get talked about.
Hmm.
And I mean, stress and anxiety is something that we all deal with, but it's something that none of us talk about really,
Yeah,
especially as men. I think men talking about it is definitely less of a thing than women talking about it.
100%. But it's funny when you do bring it up to other friends. I find that the ones, especially the ones that deal with it, they're quick to open up about their own issues.
Yeah, it's that feeling of if there's a safe place, then I'm gonna start talking.
Yeah,
But most of the time, it doesn't feel like a safe place to talk about stress or anxiety. Um, I think because none of us have been given the tools to
right.
deal with this kind of stuff. So I'm glad that we're talking about it. I think I can remember saying, I don't know if maybe this was what made it, but like I've told a couple people that there's that scene in one of the Avengers movies when they ask the Hulk, like Mark Ruffalo's character, like how does he manage his anger? How does he keep it in check? And he said, what are you talking about? I'm angry all the time. And I was like, that I say that to people a lot because it shocks people.
Right.
Like, it shocks people. For me personally, like I've been dealing with stress and anxiety as long as I can remember for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
But like on the outside, I put off this persona of this calm, cool, collected dude.
I get that a lot. People are like, "Man, you seem like the most chilled,
Hmm.
laid back guy." And I'm like, "Yeah." Inside, it's just, my mind's going a million miles per hour all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a duck on a pond, is what I tell people. That's what I am. I was like, you do not see these feet kicking.
Yeah.
And it is like once there's a door shut or something, it's like, you know, it all comes out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad we can talk about it. I think it's important. Like I like that it's like we're not professionals in this realm
Right.
because it's just two guys sharing this stuff.
Right.
I think it'll be important for other guys listening. I hope that y'all that are listening out there will get something out of it to see that it's a little bit more normal than we think it is.
Yeah.
So,
It's funny you say like more normal than we think it is. Um, I remember the first time I got prescribed an antidepressant for
mm,
this. And I was really hesitant to start it. And I knew I had a friend, he's military, dealt with a lot of PTSD. Um, I knew he was on something. So I went to him and I was like, "Hey, look, I got prescribed this Zoloft for this
mm,
anxiety." And he was right away like, "Oh yeah, I'm on that too, dude." And I was like, "Oh really?" He's like, "Yeah, you know so and so." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, he's on it too." And then he's like, "Do you know this person?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, that person's on this and this and this." And I realized like, dude, like, is everybody on this stuff? And then you start doing the research and you realize like there's a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of stuff, whether it's anxiety, depression, PTSD, or whatever it may be, but
yeah,
you're not alone.
we're all, it's just a matter of if you can hide it better than others.
Yeah.
It's like walking into someone's house and it's super clean and put together. That just means that before you got there, they spent 45 minutes or an hour putting everything. But the thing that I realize is everybody has this. There's a closet somewhere
Hmm.
stuffed full of shit,
Yeah.
and it's one of those that if someone were to open it, you would see it. And I think that is sort of a metaphor for us as people. No
Yeah.
matter where we turn or look, all of us have that closet or that door in our mind or in our hearts, or wherever, where it's just full of all that crap, and we just either are good at hiding it or not.
Yeah. Everyone's dealing with shit.
Hmm.
That's what I've learned.
So, so yeah, I'm glad you said that. Uh, so let's talk about. So when was the first time you remember feeling stressed or anxious?
Let's say the first time I would say, felt like a true panic attack. I'd probably say I was like 11 years old.
Hmm.
Um, Pitching Little League Baseball. We're playing against the rival team, and things just weren't going my way. I was walking batters. Kept hitting, getting hits off me. Just things were just not going well. And I remember like looking at my side of the dugout and seeing my coach, feeling like I'm letting my coaches down, looking at my teammates, feeling like I'm letting my teammates down, looking out in the stands, feeling like I'm letting my parents down, and then looking at the other side and seeing their coaches, and their coaches are like, "Come on, you got this. He's melting down." And then seeing their players, like they can taste blood in the water, right? And then like the parents in the stand on their side are, like, "He's not even that good." They're just saying some like harsh things. And so it's just like, I just remember standing there and everything's just like coming at me at once.
Hmm.
And I just felt like this wave of intense emotion. Um, and it was the way I describe it was like, it felt almost like out of body experience. Like I
Hmm.
was on the outside looking in. Um, it, it just kind of felt like I wasn't there. Like I'll put it this way for the pot smokers out there. It felt like I was like really stoned, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. And it was just like this intense emotion. I felt dizzy. Uh, and eventually after the game it went away, but I dealt with that for a good 30 minutes to an hour during that game. And I would say that kind of is the feeling I dealt with all through my teenage years.
Hmm.
Was- Yeah.
And did you have language to tell people like this is what I'm feeling, or you,
I didn't say anything. Like I didn't say anything because I didn't know what it was. I
yeah.
just knew it was this feeling that when it came on, I couldn't stand it,
Hmm.
and I just wanted it to go away. Um, and then, but I just attributed it to like maybe I'm hungry, or maybe maybe it's just something going on in my body. Maybe I'm getting sick. I don't know. But when I look back on it, it tended to come in clusters, and
Hmm.
it kind of came on during intense like pressure times. So
Like sports, like stuff in
sports,
school.
school, like tough things at school, you know, parents going through divorce at that time. So probably, coming on in waves as far as that goes as well. So yeah, that was kind of the feeling. And like I said, to me, it feels like you're really stoned, which is why to this day, I don't like smoking marijuana just because that's the feeling I get.
Yeah.
That's what
Hmm.
I associate it with. So I'm like, I just hate that feeling.
So like looking looking back, do you think that like there just wasn't a place to say it, talk to the people? Did you feel like you could lean on people in these times or
No, well, I guess you gotta figure, right? It's the 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. People aren't talking about mental health.
yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know what panic attacks were, right?
Hmm.
I didn't know the definition. I didn't know any of that. To me, I just thought it was just some issue, like something wrong with me.
Hmm.
Like I just have this thing that just goes wrong with me,
Hmm.
where for like an hour I'm just dealing with these intense emotions and feeling like I'm completely out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the 80s and the 90s. There wasn't a lot of space for this. We didn't know what to, nobody either had time or
Yeah.
stuff with kids. Yeah, I think for me, my anxiety and stress all it comes from like two elements. I think the first one was has to do with the religious system I was in
Hmm.
with regards to the pressure that because I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't feel that the pressure was on me
Yeah.
and that people were nope that no one was watching me. Wait, I never felt that. I always felt that people were watching me and there was this pressure on me.
Right.
And that had to do with how our church was structured, how the explanations of the Bible, what that meant. It was like God was watching, people were watching, and I had to live up to some expectation
Right.
and if I didn't, then I was going to hell.
Yeah.
Like it was like a constant thing. And then every action or thing that I was doing was weighed and measured
Yeah.
in my mind or by somebody else.
Yeah.
And it was with everything that had to do with like where was I going, who was I hanging out with, even what I was wearing, you know. I think that it ours was different in the fact that like image was everything in our church.
Hmm.
So there was this constant feeling of trying to look a certain way, or I just became hyper aware of my body and my clothes
Yeah.
way more than I think an average kid feels that way. Because we're all that way in middle school and high school.
Right. Yeah.
We're all thinking about that.
You're becoming self-aware, right?
Sure.
Like, yeah.
But I think what the layer that added to me was it was a spiritual element where like the creator of all that was there cared about how I looked.
Right.
And so that added stress. But then the other element was my family life because we lived paycheck to paycheck for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
My dad was a teacher, my mom worked when she could. And so that adds this element of stress because you were just you were always worried about if something was going to happen and how would we handle that,
Yeah.
and if the car broke down where's the money going to come from, and it just put me into this constant like fight and flight mode.
Yeah.
And so it just added to just everything. Like I don't like I'm always thinking about trying to figure out 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
so that we don't lose everything. It's like that. I told someone it always felt like I was playing Jenga and the bottom row was only had one Jenga piece, and that was just it was going to move. Someone was going to take it or something was going to take it, and then everything was going to fall.
Yeah.
So it just was living with that. And I don't know if I ever really had a panic attack per se, but I mean, there was just constant like rigidity and stress, and it just never went away. And I could rarely ever focus on things.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was a lot of it was performance.
Hmm.
And that's something that, yeah, I talk about in therapy to this day. It's
Hmm.
like always feeling like I have to be on. Like I've always been a people pleaser. You know, you put me in a room with 100 people, 99 of them love and adore me, one hates me.
Hmm.
That's all I'm going to focus on, right? Like that, that's going to eat me alive.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I think it's the performance thing. It was a big one for me. Is why it happened a lot in sports. Probably it's school academics, not living up to expectations, like you
Hmm.
said, that I think people have of me. Not even that I
Hmm.
have of myself, that I think people have of me. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever felt not boxed in
Yeah.
or in a corner. I think school was hard for me in that because it felt like prison, and it always felt like I just was like I was never comfortable, I was never okay, I was never calm, I was never really happy
Right.
because I hated school. I'm in these four walls, I'm dealing with all this stuff with God, and I have this family life that I mean, it was they did the best they can. I'm not mad at them about that, but that just adds to all of these factors that it was like it just always felt like that rubber band, like I was so tight
Hmm.
and one thing was going to snap.
Yeah.
One thing was going to make it snap, and it usually snapped on my brothers.
Yeah.
You know, it
I
was
was gonna say,
usually something like
did
that.
it ever snap on you though?
Or there was, I can remember as a kid, there was a time where I got really into chopping down trees in my backyard. We were backed up to this like wooded area, a good like 300-400 yards of just woods. And I would go back there with an axe and just find small trees and I would just chop them down.
Yeah.
And my dad came back there one time and saw that I had like chopped down 10 trees and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, that was the most like therapeutic thing for me
Yeah.
as a kid, just beating the crap out of shit because I was so,
You s-
stressed out.
My mom said as a kid, she's like, I could always tell when you had a bad day at school because you would come home and basically just go right out back, take a basketball, and just shoot hoops for like an hour by yourself. And she's
Mhm.
like, I could just tell you were working something out in your mind. So that's probably kind of what you were doing as well. Like you're focusing on the tree. There's something about the repetitiveness
Mhm.
about it, therapeutic, and probably just working out whatever was in your mind that day.
Yeah, I mean, that's what attached me so much to aggressive and loud music.
Yeah.
It would just put me in that place.
People always ask like, "What's your favorite kind of music?" And I'm always like, my answer is like, whatever mood I'm in, right? Like,
Hmm.
there's no genre. It's just whatever mood I'm in, that's gonna be my favorite type of music that matches it.
Yeah, there's so many days, headphones up, full blast.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that helped me live with it. Which was, like how did you live with it before therapy? And
Well,
before you realized like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with.
um, I push through, I guess, just like push through it. Um, it's funny that that feeling of just kind of being out of it lasted me probably all the way through high school,
Hmm.
and then it just kind of went away. But it was replaced by a new type of panic attack. And this one was like I would wake up, or I wouldn't wake up. It's usually like right when I was kind of falling asleep,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden I would just my mind would say like, "You've got to take a deep breath." And I had this urge to take a good deep breath. And if it didn't feel like it was a good deep breath, it would just set me off. And I would just sit there for 30 minutes, an hour, and just keep trying to take a good deep breath. Like I'm like hyperventilating,
Hmm.
turning on all the lights, like freaking out, fuck, shit, like what's wrong? I can't breathe, like thinking like this is it. like literally times where I'm like, this is it. I'm
Hmm.
suffocating. Like I'm going to die. Um, and then, but again, like no emotion lasts forever. And so eventually, like I would calm down, and then it would go away. But I dealt with those all through my 20s and 30s.
Hmm.
They were just like, and they would come in clusters as well. But again, I never like sat there and was like, I probably should go get help on this.
Hmm.
I just thought, man, they're just these one-off things, you know?
Yeah. I don't think I ever really got help with it. Um, Living with it is a lot of just stuffing it down,
Yeah,
just thinking like there was this resolve in me that like this was just how life is going to be for me.
yeah, me too.
And it was like just this is what it is. And I just, like I tried to lean on, you know, the people in my church. And in a lot of ways, that's great. You need to
Right,
lean on the people that you're around in the system. But a lot of times in church, when it comes to mental health, it's always through this one lens of like praying, reading
yeah,
God's will, God's testing you, God's using you, God's probably saying that this isn't the right thing for you to do,
right,
stuff like that. And that just added, it never helped. It only made it worse, you
yeah.
know. Um,
Or like, what are you doing wrong in
yeah,
God's eyes?
I think about that all the time. Like I think if something has happened in my life that I deem as negative or I don't like, it's because I've done something wrong.
Yeah,
It's still it's 43,
yeah,
you know. It's wild how much these things that I was taught as a kid come to play in my life now.
yeah.
Like, isn't it just such a weird way to look at things? Like you're late for it's not like late for work, it's like okay, you didn't get that job or you this didn't happen or even like I remember when I had all these delays, we were trying to go to Dallas and I had like 4 delays. I was thinking that I did something to cause that.
Wow.
So like that
Yeah,
stress and that anxiety like comes on.
it's tough.
um but yeah, I just stuff it down, you know um because I don't think it's easy to talk about. As I've gotten older, it was never easy to talk about.
I just didn't think, I think my problem was I wasn't putting those together, right?
Hmm.
Like I didn't put the ones that I was having as a kid through high school together with the ones I was having in my 20s and 30s of feeling like I couldn't take a good deep breath to this is something that's psychologically deeper. There's issues from my past that are bubbling up to the surface this way. Like I never put those together. I just
Hmm.
always looked at it as like this just happens every once in a while, and it sucks, but they'll go away.
Hmm.
But they never did go away. They just got worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not getting the language to say this is what I'm feeling or this is what I'm going through.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
What makes it easy to talk about? Is there something that makes it easier for you to talk about this stuff nowadays?
Um, well, I've always been someone, if something's on my mind, I've always been kind of an open book.
Hmm.
Um, so, a couple years ago when everything just got really bad, um, I just was like, yeah, I don't care if people know that I'm dealing with this. Like, I need to talk to people, like anybody that's going to listen, I need to talk to because
Hmm.
I don't know what's going on. And that kind of started my journey through to therapy and actually working on things
Hmm.
versus like you said, pushing it down or just being like, that was weird. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. So that kind of started that journey. Um, I definitely think though, yeah, today there's a lot of people are open about mental health. It's
Hmm.
it's talked about a lot more. I still think there's a stigma about it. Like I still think, sometimes people are like, how's that anxiety thing? They kind of look at you like, how's that going? Is it really real? Like, come on.
Yeah, there's this general feeling, and I think it's less than it was now.
Yeah.
but it's still there that like if you say that you deal with anxiety and stress or you're on something or you go to therapy, you talk about it, there's still people that are just like like you're this like broken individual,
Yeah.
you know? You're no longer just a normal person.
Right.
And I think that's really challenging.
Yeah.
Um, because it's not challenging. It's kind of a fucked up way to look at things because if someone has cancer or someone has something they're going through, people don't look at them like that. I mean,
Right.
they'll look at them with compassion, but like they look at you like kind of warily.
Yeah. The whole medicine thing comes in that way too,
Hmm.
right? Like the same thing. If someone's, they always use the diabetes, right?
Hmm.
It- you're not going to shame someone for taking insulin,
Nope.
but a lot of times you feel shame if you have to take an antidepressant or an
Yeah.
anti-anxiety medicine. It's like it's looked at differently.
And I think there's always pushback, especially when things are more in the forefront now. Like I'll hear people talk about how like this stress and anxiety, it's like a made up thing
Yeah.
to just make everyone feel better
Right.
or like something like that.
Or like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's people look at it as like an attention getting thing too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Everyone's stressed.
everyone's stressed.
Everyone's stressed.
I
And
hate
it's,
it. I hate it when people and I've talked to a friend like he's kind of got the same things that I've dealt with when they're like, well, just think how bad everyone around the world has, or think how good you have it, and you're like, I know all that. I still can't stop it. You
yeah.
know,
Hmm.
I can't stop it.
Hmm.
I hate that when people do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think because somebody put this, oh, it might be Joe Rogan who said this. Calm down if you get upset that I said Joe Rogan. We listen to him. But he said the worst day of your life or the worst thing that happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you or the worst day of your life. Like it's all relative.
Right.
Like stress, all of this, like, you know. So like sitting here trying to like take it away or like make you, you live in America or you live here, you have this. It's like that's
It
not
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't when you're in it, man.
Hmm.
It's just like you can't like it's just it consumes your
Hmm.
mind. And like for the most part, it's not real, right? But it's
Hmm.
still there. Like what you're freaking out about is not even real. It's not a threat. Most of the time when it's bad, I'm just worried about it getting worse.
Hmm.
And then it gets worse. And I know that, but I still can't turn it off.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's just like I don't know if this is an American thing or because everyone is like with Instagram, social media, but it's like we're so fast to call bullshit on things.
Yeah.
And so when someone like posts about stress or anxiety, it's this thing of like you're just trying to get attention or you're just trying to do this or
Yeah.
you know, you need to calm down because everyone deals with stress, just suck it up. It's like that's the worst. It's just such a fucked up way to look at people and things.
Yeah.
Like, of course, someone's out there getting attention for that. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and if someone says, yeah, I'm an anxious or I'm an anxious person, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I am too. What makes you stressed out? I'll talk about it,
Yeah. I
you know, because I think I quit caring what people thought.
think that helps.
I really have.
It
I think
does.
that I'm at this point of like, if you're going to like make fun of me or look at less of me because I tell you like, yeah, I'm angry all the time, I'm stressed out, I deal with this, then bye.
Yeah.
Like I don't have time for that anymore. And you know, yeah.
My friend the one who when I said I was prescribed antidepressants and he was telling me everybody who's on it. His quote's pretty good. He's just like, dude, I just stopped caring about shit I can't control anymore. And it's like I wish I could do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think another thing that's challenging is something that I deal with is like talking about it still feels like weakness. Like there's this voice in my head that says things like you've got to be able to handle this.
Hmm.
Like when I'm starting to get stressed out or I'm starting to get frustrated, there's someone that it's I the therapist we talk about there's like the shamer that's inside me and he starts to shame me.
Hmm.
Like why can't you handle this? You need to
Yeah.
suck this up. And so like if I talk about it or if I admit that I'm going through it right then, then I've lost the battle.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just think it's just like culturally, like talking about it with guys, we haven't been given the space or the tools to really deal with this on a real level.
Right.
It's just put your head down, get the job done, it'll be over, and then
Move
you won't be
on.
stressed out
Yeah.
anymore. But like we don't that to me just doesn't work. I mean, we don't have like we need like healthy and productive ways to deal with this.
And yeah,
And I
it's like you need an icebreaker
Yeah.
because, like I said, any of my friends that I've spoken to about this who have dealt with similar issues are quick to be like open up and want to talk about it and
Hmm.
their issues as well. Um, but you're right. It's I think with women they just kind of they have that support system among each other and it's just so much more open.
Hmm.
And with guys, it's like you kind of got to break the ice and be like, man, I'm just dealing with some stuff. And then if they are, it's like, yeah, I am. And if they're not, even friends that aren't, they're still like, man, like sucks, dude. I'm here for you. Like, let me know if there's anything you need or if you just want to talk. So for the most part, I do feel like when you do break that ice, people are receptive.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think that there have been my issues always come up when I think that if I feel like they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
That's hard for me because I look at like I'm constantly like aware of how people are acting, saying, being, and doing, and if they don't feel like a safe person, that's all. I mean, that's my shit to like learn to open up more and to
Yeah.
because I did say I quit caring, but
Yeah. I was going
like,
to say,
but
you
there's a
give some
part of
shit.
me that still fights that.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier for me to do this,
Yeah.
like sit in front of this computer, record this, and then put it out and say
Right.
it, than it is to like sit in front of someone and be like, man, I'm really stressed out.
Yeah.
Um, but that's the loop that plays in my head, and you know, like I'm constantly like learning and growing from that, but that's cool. Yeah. I think the icebreaker is good. It's almost like you need an activity
Yeah.
or something to get it going or like to do stuff because it's not just, hey, you want to come over for some tea? It's
Yeah.
like
When you
that's
come over from tea and talk about our anxiety. Yeah. That's typically not the way. Yeah. With guys, it's more like, hey, want to come over and watch football?
yeah.
By the way,
Uh-huh.
been dealing with some shit. What's going
Yeah.
on with you?
And that's fine. I think there's an element to that that needs to be, yeah, like that's how we deal. That's how we talk. That's how we go through stuff,
Yeah.
you know, icebreakers. So like when it's bad, how bad is it?
Well, yeah. So let me rewind a little bit. So, I'm dealing with those kind of breathing things, right? They come in clusters,
Hmm.
they last 30 minutes to an hour, and they go away. I'd say about 3 years ago, I had one right before going to bed. Kind of, it was pretty intense. Dealt with it for about 45 minutes. Was able to calm myself down, lay back down, and it hits right again. So this time it's like, man, dealt with that one for about an hour. Calm myself down, go to lay back down, hits again. And then from there, spiraled. And so when you say how bad does it get when it gets bad? For 9 days in a row, I could not sleep for more than 30 minutes to 40 minutes at a time
Hmm.
because they were just hitting constantly for 9 days. And after like day 5 of that, I started feeling dread. I've never felt dread in my life. Have you felt dread?
Hmm. Yeah.
It was the first time I felt dread, and I just remember thinking like, this is it. Like, I'm never getting out of this. This is like, holy shit, this is how my life is going to be moving forward. And things weren't like, I had no appetite when I was around people. I felt like I was on a different wavelength. Like, I'm watching people laugh and smile, and I'm like, never going to feel this. Um, Exhausted. scared. I didn't know what was going on.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, that's when I went to my doctor. He prescribed me the Zoloft, and I probably held off on taking that for like 4 days because I was just like really anti-medication at that point.
Mhm.
And then day 9 hit, and that's when we were down in the Outer Banks. Remember that
Mhm.
at Jim's house, and that's when I was telling you guys, I'm like, I don't know what's going on because I really looked forward to that trip as like maybe that's going to get me out of this funk. We're going to go golf. I'm going to be hanging out with my friends on the beach, and I was a complete wreck internally that whole day, that whole night. I didn't sleep, and so that next day, I just said, "All right," took the pill. Um, I would say within a couple days, it took the edge off of it. And my doctor had recommended to go see a psychiatrist. He's like, you should get with a psychiatrist. And so I connected with a psychiatrist, and and that's when he diagnosed me. He basically said, like, look, you have panic disorder. He's like, you also have ADHD. He did like the test,
Mhm.
and he broke it down as like, when you have ADHD, your mind is like 7, 8 different places, and it becomes overwhelming, and and so that's kind of like becomes your response is like these panic attacks. Like you can't deal with all this information coming in. So he switched the medication for me. It was like this antidepressant called Prestique, which it's an SNRI. So it's a neuronepinephrine intake inhibitor as well as a selective serotonin inhibitor. And he said, I find this helps more with my ADHD patients. And man, I took that within like a week. The breathing stuff was gone and never had it again. Like I've not had a panic attack since. Um, I've had anxiety issues, which we'll probably talk about, but that definitely ended that. So kind of learned like at 41 years old, was the first time I was like anybody told me I had ADHD, and then you look back and you're like, man, a lot of that makes sense now of like kind of who I was and
Mhm.
what I did, and so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can feel you on the sleep. Um, like when it's bad for me, it's usually when I am getting sleep deprived.
Hmm.
And I think my mind plays a big thing in that. Like I've had many nights like what you're talking about how like I can't get to sleep, can't stop thinking, can't stop trying to figure. It's like I'm constantly trying to figure stuff out that I can't figure out right now.
Yeah.
And I constantly I get into a lot of like fear, anxiety about like hypothetical situations that might happen like a week from now.
Hmm.
And then that starts the like you're saying, the just the cycle of not being able to fall asleep, not being able to fall asleep. And then once two or three moments like that happen and it's like I've been dealing with it for like 2 or 3 hours, like I'm a wreck,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because you're sleep deprived so that you're not thinking straight, and then you can't calm down, and so that's stressing you out. And then for me, like I'm thinking about how is this going to affect the day?
Yeah.
And it was worse. It was a lot worse when I was teaching.
Yeah.
So much worse because it would send me into the spiral like how am I going to show up for the kids? How am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to be able to do that?
Performance.
Performance based thing, and it was just it was a rage, like not depression, a rage, like just a rage spiral.
Yeah.
Mad at myself for not being able to handle this, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You're
Um,
frustrated. You don't trust your brain,
mm-mm,
right?
I
Like you
don't.
lose trust in your brain. You're like, what are you going to do next?"
Yeah, what's real? What's really happening? How are you going to deal with that? Yeah, I think during the day when it's bad, it's like I'm in a dark room, like holding myself,
Yeah.
like or in the shower, just freaking out, things like that. So that's just kind of what it is. Or the worst when it happens is if I'm in a car, you know, because then it's like, I have to like pull over because being behind the wheel when you're going through this is not good.
Well, so what's funny is when I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, and look, the highways there are insane, right? The 405, the 5, the 101, they're all just like eight lane highways. It's just stressful driving on highways out there. I one day was on the highway and I get this panic attack that I'm going to pass out behind the wheel, right? I'm like, and so it gets so bad, panic attack while driving, I have to pull over as well. And that started about a year and a half of me trying to avoid highways because every time I got on a highway, I got the same panic attack that I was going to pass out behind the wheel. Uh,
Jeez.
and
Hmm.
you just can't live in LA and not drive on highways.
Same thing in Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for that one, I was trying to, I remember trying to figure that one out because I was like in my 30s. And, I would try like, all right, I'm going to eat before I get on the highway. It didn't work. I'm going to drink water. That didn't work. I'm not going to drink any caffeine. Didn't work. And then one day I'm on this forum and people are talking about that same issue. And
Hmm.
someone said they went to their doctor. The doctor said, look, when you get a panic attack, your blood pressure goes up and it's actually harder to pass out when your blood pressure goes up. I don't know why, but it clicked with me. Never had one of those ever since reading that.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah. I think about one of the worst instances I've had. Well, this will bleed into I was gonna say the other thing when it's bad, something gets broken. That's what happens because I'm always reacting. I take it out on whatever's around.
Mm.
There's been a lot of things, and luckily we have a basement. So there's a lot of things that like I can take. Like we used to have 12 pool cues. We only have five
Yeah.
now because I've had very like I've had
So that's why they're all crooked down there.
yeah, there's a lot of there's a few that are broken and stuff, and it's scary. I remember one time as a kid I was so angry at something that was going on, and I had a ukulele that I had bought and I just destroyed that thing. My dad saw it, and it was really interesting because my dad saw it and just broke down crying
Oh man.
because he was like, "What? Like, what are you so angry about?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening in your life?" And there was just no outlet,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what are the biggest triggers for you?
Sleep.
Hmm.
Probably that's probably the biggest one for me.
Hmm.
Um I will say if I'm in a bad spot with the anxiety, I will cut out caffeine and I do find that helps.
Hmm.
Um I mean, I love my morning coffee though. So the second I start feeling better, I'll start testing the waters right away. But I think sleep honestly is the biggest one. If I can get a good night's sleep,
Hmm.
like this past March, I went through about a month of really intense anxiety. And I was kind of just keeping like notes, daily notes on just how the day went, how I felt, how I slept. And even during the most intense times, if I got a good night's sleep, I found the next day was pretty good.
Yeah.
And if the sleep was bad, um, I found out, yeah, it was not good. So hydroxyzine, I will take a hydroxyzine if the sleeps multiple days in a row that are just getting bad,
Hmm.
and usually that will help reset.
So sleep. Yeah. Sleep's big for me. The funniest one for me is being hot.
Being hot, yeah, being
Being
uncomfortable,
hot is hot, not like being hot outside. Like if I'm at the beach or whatever or there, that's fine. But if I'm in a place I start getting hot and I can't think,
yeah,
right, that triggers the fuck out of me.
yeah,
And I'm just like because it's like my body's trying to cool off, trying to because I run hot a lot,
yeah,
and so that's a big one. For me, all of my triggers come from this feeling of not having space or time or not being able to if I don't feel like I have a voice or I can control a situation.
yeah. Control's a big one. Yeah,
That's the biggest thing. The worst instance I had in front of this was in front of my wife was I was at a grocery store. I think I might have talked about this here, but I'll share it again. But like Grocery stores stress me out
Yeah.
because I've worked in one and I know what it takes for it to work right and to get in right and out. And people, I feel like nobody understands that
Mm-hmm.
because not many people have ever worked in a grocery store. So I get really stressed out, especially in the checkout lane when because there's people behind me, there's people in front of me trying to get in, trying to get out, trying to go. Like that's and it's I'm just like like I feel like there's a way to to check out your groceries, put them on a way so it goes faster
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But there was this instance where like I was trying to get stuff for my meal planning because when I was teaching, I just had to have that. And I used to be able to go to Whole Foods and there would be this section where you could have everything laid out, you could grab it and go. Well, they didn't have that. And for some reason, we had to go to the actual deli counter. And right away, that was weird for me. I felt really uncomfortable because I didn't understand what was going on. Then all of a sudden, the lady's asking me a question, and I didn't know what the answer was because I didn't realize the size I needed. And then my wife's asking me a question, and so all of a sudden, I felt like I didn't have space to figure this out and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have time. Like I felt under the gun. Like
Yeah.
there was someone telling me, you got to figure this out fast, figure this out fast.
Yeah.
And I lost my shit. I had to go outside and sit in the car. Could not be in the grocery store anymore.
That's
Wife
crazy.
figured, she had to handle that stuff.
Um,
So it's like space and time. If I feel boxed in,
yeah.
then I feel like I have to fight my way. I'm having to fight my way out.
Do you, I will say another trigger, actually, and a big one as far as the ADHD goes is routine.
Hmm.
Um, if I'm thrown off my routine, and I think that's why summers I struggle because the kids are home, and
Hmm.
just my whole routine, my whole world is thrown upside down. And so for the last 3 summers in a row, I've struggled. I've had like elevated anxiety and things like that. I've learned to control it a little better now. But I guess my question for you is, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD or ever looked
No,
into it?
no. There's been a lot of thought
Yeah.
recently, but I'll tell you the other biggest trigger that I've gotten rid of was the job.
Yeah.
Teaching was I'm glad I did it. I'm glad that I gave it a go, and it was not for me. It
Yeah.
put me in a place where it just fed all of those
Mm-hmm.
things that get me into that stress.
Yeah.
And like you talked about routine, like like the summers. It was for almost a decade what I thought was going to be this amazing thing never was amazing
For
be,
summers,
for
like,
summers
yeah.
because the routine was always off
Yeah.
and then that kind of stuff. It's just the nature of that job. I think it has become, I mean, it's for a whole nother podcast. I could talk about
Yeah.
this, but it was the thing that was like this. I could pinpoint a lot, and I was like, this is if I don't get rid of this thing right now, I'm gonna lose my marriage, and I'm gonna be a terrible father
Yeah.
because everything became about me. We talk about like needing, I was going to talk about what do you do to help you through this, but like life revolved around me for years because I needed all of these things and if I didn't get it, it was gone.
Yeah.
So, when I talked with my psychiatrist and all of those with the people, I was like, let's get rid of this thing and see what works. And it was
Yeah.
weird because as soon as I got rid of it, like I was able to realize things and get rid of stuff. And like
Yeah.
I've been able to kind of like
Lighten the load.
lighten the load.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took quitting a job
Yeah.
to get better. But since I've quit that job, there's been definitely a level of like lighten. Like I
Yeah.
feel lighter. And I still feel like maybe that's something that I need to look into because there is an element of that that I see like when you talk about how you're dealing with your things, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I think about that too."
Yeah.
It's just I'm also doing things like I'm trying to get like this is one thing we might be jumping ahead, but like I'm getting the physical things in order, like my
Yeah.
body. Like I'm working with just hormone issues and like cholesterol issues and like all these things.
Yeah.
And that's something that that has helped amazing. Which is like, okay, getting that in order. And if this doesn't really, if it's still like as big as it feel it sometimes, then we'll look into that. But let's focus on the health side of
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. Yeah, what I hate about like everyone has ADHD, right? Everyone claims it these days.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm hyper and I can't pay attention, but it's more that I think the big thing about it is like I said, is like becoming overwhelmed.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, sometimes I know we talk about it a lot, and like sometimes I think about like a lot of the things you describe are things that I go through
Hmm.
as well. And I just wonder sometimes like I wonder if Roy's ever been, tested for that.
Yeah, I mean, to think about things that take people like 40 minutes to do takes me double.
Yeah,
To sit, like I remember, like I could watch people write papers and watch people just sit in front of a task and
yeah.
be able to get it done in like a short amount of time. Like, no, like even when I was prepping for this, it was like I'd write a little bit, work, and then I'm like, oh yeah, what's that over there? Or oh, this triggers, what is this memory?
Yeah.
And it's like, but on some level, yeah, everybody deals with that.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm definitely, it's in there. It's just like, let's get this health stuff because it's interesting. Because I mean, we'll just walk. What's helped me is dealing with my health issues.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's wild, like like dealing with the physical helps the mental.
Hmm.
Um, and getting things in order. Like when I say getting things in order, it's like look at, I've looked at every, I call it, I've peeked in every cupboard in my body, like
Yeah.
where are the issues and stuff. And, you know, full disclosure, like noticing you have Epstein-Barr, which is the chronic mono, like that plays into my stress and anxiety because it makes you tired, you know?
I've had mono twice.
Oh, wow. There, yeah. Or like things like if you have markers for like high estrogen, like that's something that makes it hard for you to think,
Yeah.
brain fog, things like that. And that comes from genetic stuff that you can't control. I have no problem talking about that. It's because the more that I've done that, more I've been able to deal with this in like a healthy, productive way.
Yeah, and I think that is the approach to take if you can, right? Like you read a lot about like things like depression
Hmm.
where there's deficiencies in vitamin D's, vitamin, B12, um where I think when you go to a doctor or a psychiatrist, you get 30 minutes with them and it's just so much easier for them to be like, "Here, take this."
Yeah. Hmm.
Um Instead of like, "Let's run a test of everything real quick. Let's see if you're deficient in anything." Because it's like the doctor put me on trazodone for sleep meds, which works. Um, but I don't like being on medication if I don't have to.
Hmm.
And so I started reading a lot about magnesium. And so I was like, well, let me try to take magnesium before bed. And I swear to God, for me, it works better than a sleep med.
Hmm.
It just relaxes me a little bit.
Yeah.
But then it makes me feel like, well, am I deficient in magnesium? Because when I take magnesium, I don't feel the anxiety. I feel relaxed, and it's just your typical, like, little gummy magnesium. So I'm just, it makes you wonder. But like you said, like the
Well,
physical, it's all connected,
hmm,
So
yeah. That's why there's this, they talk about if you see people with big guts, it's your body's protection. It's like they're not dealing with something emotionally.
hmm.
It's really interesting to hear that. I think, yeah, it is all linked. I do magnesium. I have a magnesium glycinate powder that I put into this cacao drink that I'll take sometimes, and that calms me down.
Yeah.
That's why I think like shout out to functional medicine doctors because that's what I've been using the last 2 years. Two. I started with one here in Virginia Beach and the others in Colorado. And their approach is blood tests first.
Yeah.
And it's not just like one thing. Like there's the first blood test I took was 15 panels.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying that right. And it's like 8 pages of documentation. I also did a stool sample, a poop test, a poop and pee test. and they look at that stuff.
Is that like a
And
gut bacteria thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
and so their approach is they look at you as like this whole thing, because a lot of times doctors look at us as like in the parts, you know,
Yeah.
when I think we need to look at people as like a whole. And so like, she goes, "Okay, so looking at you're deficient in this. This is interesting. This is interesting. This is interesting." And so yeah, like I might take more supplements and like more stuff, but like it's like you're saying, there's deficiencies in the body.
Hmm.
And so that has made a world of difference.
Yeah.
And like it's cool, and it's also like to know like that some of the things I'm dealing with are a genetic thing.
Right.
It's a metabolic issue that like it's not like I've did something wrong. It's just this is how your body works.
Some of this, yeah. I mean, there's
Hmm.
genetics play a huge role. But if
Yeah.
you can help mitigate some of
Hmm.
that,
Sure.
you know,
And
definitely.
that's been my thing. It's like, let's see if we can do it this way.
Hmm.
And so doing that way, and then working with like trying to run when I can, but also there is something about going into the gym and just doing
Yeah.
workouts. Like I tell somebody, there's something therapeutic about just picking up something heavy, putting it down, and doing that repeatedly,
Yeah.
that just gets out all of your stress. And
Oh
that's why
yeah.
people like, there's been a couple times when people said like, I don't want to mess with you when you're at the gym.
Oh yeah. I remember running into you one time, and it was just like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'll let him finish that set. He looks like he's about to rage punch
Yeah, because
something."
9 times out of 10, what I'm doing is I'm working out demons. Like I'm pushing. I call it the void. I deal with the void,
Yeah.
all encompassing dark void that will eventually envelop my soul. Like I'm pushing that away.
Yeah.
And so like when I'm at the gym, like it's almost like I don't even care about the gains. I just care about, I need to work this out, because if I don't, I'm gonna punch the wall.
Yeah.
I'm gonna break this glass that's in front of me.
That's how running is for me. It's basically like there's just days where I'm like my mind is it's racing too fast,
Hmm.
and I just need to run until it slows down.
Yeah.
It's the only thing.
Mhm. So like, yeah, those are the things. Like that's what's how like but I was gonna say being proactive. So it's like doing these things first so that it helps the things that are coming next,
Yeah.
right? Like going to the gym in the morning, like waking up before people to try to have like some time. I think that helps. Less caffeine definitely helps me.
Less caffeine does.
Uh,
I'm never gonna try to. I'm never gonna give it up 100%, but
no.
less caffeine
Mhm.
for sure helps.
Yeah, I've gone to where it's one, like I drink decaf, but I drink 1 cup of coffee a day now,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen a difference
Yep.
in myself, because
Yep.
caffeine affects your adrenals and
Yeah.
just ramps you up. And
Was it psychostimulant?
Mhm.
Like, yeah.
And I love it. I was a barista for 10 years. I love coffee in a way that most people don't. Like I love it deeply. And
Even the physical thing of
yeah.
just like
Hmm.
I don't know. It's like smoking a cigarette,
The
right? Where
ritual.
it's
Yeah,
like
it's the ritual.
it's a ritual. It's a physical thing. It's a social thing. Like
Yep.
I don't want to meet you up at American Brew and drink a chamomile tea, right? Like
No, you want the
I
coffee
want
or
the
what?
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the process. For
Eh,
me, it's all about the process.
Yeah.
Like sitting there and making a Chemex or a pour over versus a drip
Oh yeah.
gets me really psyched for that.
The French press in the morning, my wife and I, and like grinding the coffee, smelling it, that whole
Mhm.
process. Like I can't wait
I
for the
want to like
coffee.
I want a candle that smells like coffee being made and bread being baked,
Oh yeah.
or bacon, bread and bacon. If they could combine all of that into one,
There's got to be one.
yeah. Therapy has helped tremendously.
Mhm.
I think having someone who's objective in a situation has helped a ton.
Yep.
Um, Gotten me into, because it helps think of things in a way that's not me in like the rage cloud spiral.
Hmm.
That's helped a lot.
I had I've had two therapists. The first one I had talked more about herself and then told me like, yeah, you'll probably be on meds for the rest of your life. Didn't really find that one productive. But the second one I found
Mm.
is really good at reframing my thoughts.
Yeah. Hmm.
She is so great. I'm just like, oh, I'm never doing getting out of this. I'm never, yeah. And she just will reframe it to where I'm like, oh, actually, I have been making progress, or actually, I am out of this.
Yeah.
What am I
Hmm.
talking about? Like, she's great at that. So yeah.
Yeah. My therapist, he gives me tools for the toolbox. He has one approach. He does EMDR, which is like reframing old memories.
Hmm.
And we've done a couple, and that's helped tremendously. But he also kind of throws in cognitive behavioral stuff.
Hmm.
There's another one he's worked at with called internal family systems. It's another approach to things. And so, because there is this thing where like people think like you're going to be on therapy forever,
Yeah.
right? And like therapists are like grifters because they're just going to prey on you and they're going to get you to
Yeah.
constantly be there. And I think there is an element to like let's think about that for a second. If you work out once, are you going to get results?
Right now.
So it's like if you brush your teeth once, is that going to fix your teeth?
Yeah.
And so
True.
yeah, like I do feel like on some level I might have a therapist for a while, and at the same time it's like that's what like talking with someone every month has been able to like help me transform a lot of my thoughts, reframe my thinking, and lighten the load.
Yeah.
And
I,
it's amazing.
yeah, I remember the second therapist I found. It took a couple sessions with her. I'm sitting there like, I don't get this therapy thing. And then I just remember finally like there was just a session, it was just a really good one. When you have a really good one, you walk out and you're like, whoa, a lot just clicked right there.
Yeah.
So I agree. You gotta kind of stay with it. And don't be afraid to change therapists if you feel like that one's not you're
Mhm.
not connecting with that one or you're not getting what you need out of it.
Yeah, because there is a level to some. There's this book about bad therapy, this doctrine. They talk about how therapy's been overprescribed for lots of people, and I think on some level, sure, we could talk about that, but like I don't know, like you can find other people. You can go. You need to have someone to talk to. Like
hmm
life isn't static. It
Yeah.
doesn't like move like we're constantly being faced with like new things, new approaches. Life is different every day. And so like to have that is amazing.
Yeah.
And so like what I loved about my therapist is like there's been this like, okay, we're gonna meet every other time. And then it was like, I think we only need to meet once a month. And he even was like, I don't think you need more.
Yeah.
I think you need to, I think if we over talk about this, you're gonna just, it's just gonna be this cycle.
Right.
And that's when
That's
I
good.
was like, cool, I'm into
You
this.
got yeah, you trust.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, I do couples therapy. I've done couples therapy for years with my wife, and that was just because we both are like, we need to have someone in the room
Right.
that doesn't have skin in the game.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is like just being open about it with my wife
Yeah.
and certain friends. That's helped because if they don't know what's going on in your brain, they can't help you, or they're going to react to how you're reacting.
Yeah.
You know. And then I this couple things, riding the wave, just allowing myself to be stressed versus trying to stop it.
Yeah, there's a good book called Dare Anxiety.
Uh-huh.
It's basically acceptance, right?
Yeah.
It's learning to accept it and move past it. And it helps.
Yeah.
Like man, you can't fight anxiety. You cannot.
Yeah.
You're just gonna make it worse.
In ways, I tell people that I honor the feeling, I honor the stress. Like I respect it enough to give it the space
Yeah.
because it's trying at some level. I don't know if you agree with this, but I think it's trying to tell me something.
Yeah, 100%.
And so it's like if I just let it happen, or in a moment and be like, I just tell my wife or I give my wife a look or something,
Hmm.
and she knows, and then I have like it usually instead of taking 15 minutes, it takes 5.
Yeah. I've heard the analogy of you're the captain of like say it's a ship, right? An old ship. And the anxiety is the person on the watchtower.
Mm-hmm.
and it rings the bell, iceberg, iceberg, iceberg. And so as the captain, you immediately start turning the wheel and reacting to it, but there's no iceberg.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the person on the watchtower thinks they did a good job because you reacted to their warning. And so it's kind of that you kind of look at that person on the watchtower, and next time they call for iceberg, you assure them that there's no iceberg, but you accept that they're looking out for you, and they might do it again and again, and there's no iceberg. But eventually, if you don't move the ship and react, they eventually know like, okay, this that actually isn't a threat. What I keep thinking is a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that alarm bell gets quieter and quieter until it no longer rings.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. Yeah. Because for me, my stuff turns into, we call it the elephant,
Uh-huh.
and it's like when it gets to this point, if I try to stop it or I try to like shrink it really fast, it becomes the elephant. And
Yeah.
let's try to control an elephant. That's not going to be easy.
I can do
So
it.
he's always saying like, let's try to stop the elephant. You
Yeah.
know. The last thing I was going to say is having something to fidget with is it's weird. Like that helps. Whenever I'm feeling stressed out or I'm doing something, like I don't know if you see, like I have this little tech deck skateboard.
Yeah.
I'm literally like I rub the sandpaper on it constantly. Like when I was in a therapy session with my wife the other week, and it was just like I was just going at it. So we were talking about something that I was just super stressed out
Yeah.
about. Yeah, I have little beads that I'll be fiddling with, or like I'm flicking pens. Like I have to have something because it like focuses my mind more.
My dad used to roll tape. There would
Really?
just be rolled tape, little pieces of tape all around his office and in the house. You and Jim always make fun of me because I'm always playing, any type of ball sport, right? You
Yeah.
guys always joke, that's mine. Just do with
Really?
ball. Like that
Yep.
is, I'll throw a ball up in the air against the wall.
Hmm.
So, like my mom said as a kid, I would just shoot a basketball for hours
Yeah.
until my mind would slow down.
Is there anything else that you do that's helped that we haven't?
Uh,
Besides,
we spoke about routine. Routine, I think,
yeah,
is the biggest thing. That and sleep have been the biggest things for me. Um, reading,
breathing.
reading,
Oh, reading.
yeah, reading.
Yeah.
Like, and not just reading books about anxiety, just reading. Like, read. Um, don't scroll. Read if possible.
Hmm.
And look, man, I've got two young kids. Um, and they take a lot of your time, but learning to kind of create your own time, w- even with the kids at home during summer, has really helped, and kind of creating a pattern
That's
with
cool.
them.
Do you do any like meditating? I forgot to put meditating. I try to do something like that daily.
I, it's funny. The breathing thing, maybe because my panic attacks were breathing. The breathing thing never has really worked for me very well. I've tried the meditating thing.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I just do it incorrectly. I don't know.
Well, there's no incorrect way to do it.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
what.
like, it doesn't seem to work for me. For me, it's just like go for a walk, get
Yeah. Hmm.
outside, get some fresh air are my big things.
Yeah. I try to sit. Like I started. Like I really got into the meditating for a while, but then you get into this mindset if you're doing it wrong, it's normal. That's what everybody says. But breathing exercises definitely help. Like the box breathing is one that I try when I start meditating. But for me, I just go and I sit on my couch in my back room for 20 minutes or 10 minutes and not try to do anything except just like, let's just breathe regularly for a minute,
Yeah,
just because it calms me down. It calms me down. I do that with when I was teaching all the
yeah,
time. Like when kids would come to me like anxious, hurt, frustrated, I'd make them take three big deep breaths before they started talking to me.
yeah. That's a good idea. We make our kids do deep breaths.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think they appreciate that.
Do they do the I can't?
Yeah, my little one every day at drop off has been doing that. It's been tough. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, because I tell people if because I tell the kids like if you're not breathing, your brain's not thinking right
yeah.
because your brain wants the oxygen. As soon as you give the brain the oxygen, it calms down.
I think would you say at the core anxiety? it's just really about the mind racing and having to slow it down. Is that really like what it boils down to, you think?
I think for me, it might be more of like your ego is constantly fearing, it's trying to keep you safe. Like a lot of books that I've read and people that I talk to, there's the ego part of you inside of your brain. It's like looking out for threats and what can harm you and thinking about what happened in the past. So
Yeah.
it's like constantly in a past and future mindset. Because if something comes up that looks like something that happened before,
Yeah.
it thinks that this is going to happen again.
So you're living in the past and present. How do you live more in the or past and future? How do you live more in the present?
I think it's the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's doing the things that can be productive and proactive.
Yeah.
And also, like you're saying, like the more you like, the more I journal, the more I talk about this with my therapist, the more I do these things, it's almost like I'm more present and I'm able to see things as they are versus what I think they're going to be.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. And that unfortunately takes time and practice.
It does. And the more you do it in the beginning and incorporate, because I found that like the more that I incorporated this into my life, it's not that the less time it took.
Yeah.
Like some days I might need a 20-minute like breathing meditation, and other times I just need 5 minutes.
Right.
Like some days I need like a full on hour of just beating my body up in the gym to get it out, or some days it's just like a quick 30-minute workout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you really have to sit down and figure out what it is that you need. I think that's what both of us have done
Hmm.
because I mean, we could tell people, like people could hear this and this worked for us, but it might not work for them.
You're right. And I can't, you go on all those Reddit forums and YouTube channels, and people are like, this is the guaranteed.
Mhm.
And if someone says it's a guaranteed way, like stay away or be very cautious.
Oh my God. Yeah. My alarm, as
Yeah.
soon as someone says I got the answers, the
Yeah.
alarm bells go off. I think the only thing that I've ever said in that regard, I've done it on 2 episodes years ago, is you got to figure out what are your value, like what do you value,
Yeah.
and then align your life that way. There's no like it's and don't get into the weeds with that. Like I called them my pillars. A lot of people say that.
Hmm.
There's like things that I need to be doing that help sustain my life and give me the foundation that I want.
Right.
You know, Specifically it's the religious or it's the mental, the physical, the emotional. What was the fourth one? And mental, emotional, physical, spiritual.
Yeah.
So those areas of my life I value. I value like looking into what does it all mean. I value like therapy. I value physical and the mental. So like reading, exercising, questioning things, therapy, like working on those I find give me what I need.
Hmm.
So it's just all that's what we all have to do.
Yeah. You've got to find it. And because we're all different. And even back to the medication, like one medication might work for someone, but it might not
Hmm.
work for another person. It's just like things like you're saying, like things that help
Hmm.
might work for me, but might not work for you at all.
Yeah. Some
Um,
people don't want to learn about what does it all mean, and that's okay.
but you got to keep trying. Like
Yeah.
keep trying
Yeah.
things, keep working on it. Look, no emotion lasts forever. That's something that I always think about too. If I'm going through a rough time, like think how many emotions you have through the day.
Hmm.
You're happy, you're sad, you have many different emotions that go throughout the day. So you're never going to be stuck in just one, even though sometimes it feels like you will be. And then, yeah, one quote I always like is like, as soon as you forget about anxiety, it forgets about you.
I'm gonna remember that. Yeah. Um, any last things? Any last words?
No, no. I think, yeah, like I said, just be patient. I know you read that a lot is people say like, don't be hard on yourself, be patient, and really that's all you can do.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's awesome. I think for me, it's like Don't feel like you're broken.
Yeah.
Don't pile on the shame.
Right.
Let it be there, let it happen. But, talk to someone if you need to.
Yeah. And if they don't want to talk to you, who cares? Move to the next person.
Yeah. Totally. I think, yeah, this has been good.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. It's been fun. It's been too long.
Yeah, maybe we'll get you on in like another year, another 6 months instead of two
Yeah, we'll
years.
do an update.
Um,
Right
Take
on.
care, man.
All right. Thanks, Roy.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode and supporting the podcast. If you feel that you struggle with this, I think the first thing I hope that you can do is just know that you're not alone in this and that reaching out for help is not a bad thing, a small thing, weakness. It's a powerful thing. If you'd like to support this podcast, the easiest way is to just listen, share the episode, rate, review, all those good things. Share this with your friends, people you think this message would be applicable to. You can also support this podcast financially by contributing to the GoFundMe, where you will see the link in the show notes, and I'll also have it in the Instagram. You can follow the link at the bio. Thanks again. Remember, it's the channel. I'm not the source. Peace.